Hi everybody and welcome back to the painting channel. Today is something a little different. It's a bit of a natter while I paint this wonderful African Impala. So join me now, let's see how we get on. Okay everybody, as I said just now, it's a bit of a natter, a little bit of off-the-cuff stuff while I paint this wonderful African Impala. Now the Impala is just a great antelope from Africa, really widespread, so this beautiful buck was begging to be painted. So I thought that as it was a long one, I would sort of make it a bit time-lapsey, a little bit speeded up. But instead of just trying to narrate everything, the paint and the color mixes are all there for you to enjoy. So I just felt that I'd have a bit of an off-the-cuff natter or ramble. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope I don't bore you too much. And what I will say is always a thank you to my subscribers, new and old. Thank you so much for coming on board and helping me support the channel and helping it grow. That really is fantastic. And as I always say, if you're watching this, you enjoy my content. If you've actually watched more than one of my videos, you should be subscribing. And if you're not, then please subscribe. It really does help me. And at the same time, it helps the channel grow. So subscribe, like, and also give it the thumbs up. That's fantastic. And also add any comments. If you've got something to say, put it in the comment section underneath and I'd be glad to read them and always will reply to them. And if you want a lot more from me, then don't forget every Monday night there is a live stream at 7 o'clock on London time. So tune in for that and also add your name to the comments and say something. You'd be most welcome. It'd be fantastic to have you on board watching. And if you want even more than that, don't forget, nip on over to my Patreon. Now, there is so much more, including the full version of this particular painting is there. So if you want to get involved, have a look, see what tier invites you, and you'd be so welcome. They're fantastic. And there are so many real-time videos there for you to enjoy and learn from. And there is also a Facebook community dedicated purely to all my patrons, and we're like a growing family. It's really great. So if you want to get a piece of that, then nip on over. All the details in the description under this and every video, and I'd love to see you there and welcome you. So with that all said, let's have a little ramble. Let's see what happens and enjoy the painting, enjoy the video. Catch you all in the next one. Stay safe, be happy, happy painting, but above all, stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye. Hi guys and welcome back. Now I'm going to be having a bit of a natter with you while you sit and watch me paint this beautiful Impala stag from Africa. It has to be said the Impala is probably one of the most common of all the African antelope that you're going to see when you visit the country or the continent. But it does have a more sparse cousin in Namibia and those areas called the black-faced Impala. I painted loads of those as well in my time. But this is just a sort of, I suppose if you want to term it, a common or garden Impala. But it is still a most striking of animals. And this buck standing alone on the sort of field in somewhere in Zambia, it was just fantastic, and it was begging to be painted. Now what I'm doing, and what I normally do, is when I do something like this, I've got the reference next to me. You can see the reference photo in the top corner at the moment, and basically I'm using Umber and I'm feeling my way, as it were. I'm drawing straight in with a brush. I don't use pencil and stuff commonly when I am doing a sketch, certainly in this way. If I'm doing a really complex African painting, then I will do lots of sketching first, trying to get all my values right, all my shapes and everything right, the construction of the painting, its composition, and altering things around. There are many techniques for doing that, but for something like this, it's just a little sketch that I wanted to do and just show you how I go about creating this small subject matter and seeing what happens. What I will say though, that my way is just one way of many ways of doing this sort of thing. It is a study and is not going to be a very, very complex piece of work to be creating. So I chose to do it in paint. Now the reason I do this with my plein air too. When I go out with my friends or on my own and I'm painting in oils, I do not use charcoals, I do not use pencil. I always go straight in with the brush and I draw directly with burnt umber. It's my color of choice. I mean, it could be almost any color that you choose to do this with. I just happen to use burnt umber. It's always on my palette, it's always ready to hand, and it does mean to say that it doesn't create a lot of problems, but it does allow me to introduce my darks very, very early on in the construction of any work. So whether it be a local landscape plein air or whether it be a small study such as this one from Africa, I will always draw with the umber to begin with. And in many of my other oil tutorials that you see, you will see me just sketch with burnt umber or paint directly. Now for the painting process, I do apologize a little bit that I did jump the sketch a little bit and cut little bits out just to aid the speed up of that section of the painting. It did take quite a while to do, and because of that I didn't want to sort of bore each and every one of you with that. So I haven't really jumped anything. No, actually I haven't cut anything out of this section of the video. So the whole of the painting is merely speeded up, and you do see all the paint mixes that I create or use to create this. All you got to do is be a little bit quick to watch it all happen or unfold. I suppose you could go over it again and again to watch it, but I just felt that I didn't want to cut anything out of this because it was a process of painting, it's a process of choosing colors that I wanted to do across the whole painting, and I felt that to cut any of that out would not quite have worked as well. So I took the plunge, and hopefully you don't mind the video being just a little bit longer than normal, but I'm sure you'll get something from that. Now you can see some of the values that I'm using here are very, very close to the umber. It means to say that the things like the baboons there that are almost disappearing, when you squint down, they're almost disappearing from view. They're still there, but they will get a lot darker and they will be modeled and rendered a lot more clearly later on in the painting. This is really getting the block in done. Well, I should be honest and say that I could have used a wider or bigger brush for this process. I think the brush I use was a little bit too small, if I'm truthful. But I got the job done. It could have been maybe a little bit more expressive, I don't know. I'm using a lot of cool colours, a lot of cool pinky violets, as well as some darker blues. Sort of, I don't know, that the violets they're more greys than violet, but they have that coolness in them. And I deliberately did that around the antelope because I wanted the rich reds and russets in the antelope to really throw him out. So I was deliberately using cool colours in that middle part of the field behind him, and to allow all of him as best I could to throw out when it needed to. But anyway, that's all about the painting. The colours that I'm using, you can see across the top of the video that I've got my burnt umber. The green I'm using and I'm dipping into is Cobalt Turquoise Cobalt, or Cobalt Turquoise. It's got to be said, I really have become so fond of that colour. It's a Michael Harding colour. It is truly a lovely colour. I dismissed it for so many years before, but a friend of mine stuck a little bit on one of my palettes one day, and I just actually fell in love with it. So my normal green is phthalo green, phthalocyanin green. I've actually replaced that in the last few months in favour of Cobalt Turquoise. The two blues that I've got on there are actually Ultramarine Blue and Cobalt Blue. Has to be said again, they are probably my most favourite too. But this white, this sky colour, actually was a little bit of a cheat in many ways, because although you don't see the colour on there, I did use a little bit of phthalocyanin blue and a little bit of turquoise to green it out a little bit more, and it just gave me a super sky, a super African sky, in the background there. It does get a little corrupted with other colours later on, but it started life really pretty and very fresh, and I wanted to keep that. So moving on with the blues, apart from the fact that little interloper on this occasion, the phthalo blue is a blue that I do have with me all the time, and when I'm out plein airing, ultimately you'll see all three blues on my palette and not just the two that you see here. I only used the restricted palette because I had difficulty figuring out how I could photograph or film both the painting and the palette in operation at the same time. Got to be said though, since I actually finished filming this video, I have worked out that it would be an awful lot better for me and in my interest to actually use two cameras, one on the canvas and one on the palette itself. Okay, so enough of all that tech talk. You haven't tuned in and watched this painting just to hear about how I'm filming this particular or any other video, come to that, although I'm sure I probably will do the odd video at some point on some of the techniques that I use to not only film but also how I edit certain footage and how I go about it. And I am no master at any of that. I barely know what I'm doing sometimes. I really do fly by the seat of my pants and study an awful lot of things on YouTube from those content creators out there that do a far better job than I will probably ever do. But it might be interesting to some people to figure or see exactly what I get up to and how I go about it. And I'm sure there'll be some wonderful comments out there from some of you who know far more than I that will tell me, well, if I did it this way, it would look that much better. And I'm sure it can. But for me, I'm an artist and I'm still learning to be a filmmaker. So that is something that I will develop over the years to come. What I really love, though, is being able to impart all the many years I've had as a full-time professional painter and sort of giving that information to other people, helping other people out develop their artwork, their skills, so that they feel personally satisfied when they sit down at a table or an easel and create something, knowing that they've had a little bit of help and some guidance from somebody like me. And I know I never had any of that when I was starting off way back, and I don't want to start thinking how far back that really was, but way back when I started, I didn't have help. I didn't have there wasn't such things as art classes like there are today. There weren't the tutors about, such as those online content creators creating art videos. None of that was around, and we flew by the seat of our pants. We actually got on with the job and learned our craft the hard way. And you know, okay, you could have gone to art college, of course you could, and one or two lucky artists, friends of mine, also ended up getting patrons, and also on top of that finding one or two established artists that took them on, and some of those names are well documented. But for the majority of people, such as myself, it wasn't a case of finding that person who would take you on and teach you how to paint. It was actually look at books or just get on with it. And that's really what I did. I actually just got on with it. And I had no choice in that matter, if I'm honest. But I have made some terrible mistakes, and I've had some absolutely wonderful occasions that I will never ever forget and will cherish to the end of my days. And they are, some of them documented, others are not, and I carry them with me in my heart always. So I can't complain. It's been a very difficult journey as a painter to learn the craft and to study and to live beyond all the issues that I've created or had come my way. And I could fill a book with all those problems. I can, really can. There are some that you think some days when you wake up and you think, oh Lord, why am I doing this? Why do I keep on pushing myself through this and jumping through these hoops all the time? And then suddenly something really beautiful happens, and you suddenly wake up and you realize, No, that's why I do it. That's why I'm painting. That's why I enjoy what I do. And that's why I keep jumping through these hoops all the time. I really can't stress that enough, that you do need to have a really deep, ingrained urge, need, desire, drive, ambition deep inside you to want to go and paint pictures all the time, and to run the gauntlet, I suppose, of trying to establish yourself and make enough money that you can hopefully bring up a family and do all of those things that people with regular jobs, regular incomes have. Now, today though, things, I've got to say, are a little bit different really for a lot of artists. There are a lot of young artists out there that I've noticed over the last few years that are just suddenly appearing, and I don't say appearing because they suddenly got the bug or urge to paint. It's just because the fact that the internet is becoming bigger, more all-embracing, and it's bringing together and knocking down boundaries, and it's bringing together the world ever so much closer. So people have been painting all the time, of course they have, and young people come up and they enjoy painting and they're good at it, and they turn it into an income or a living, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's fantastic to see so many people these days making a living from painting and creating or making art. And to that end, I think that it would be so much harder for so many more of those out there doing that, had it not be for the internet or for the social media platforms giving them the chance to air and show their work to a greater and wider audience. Nothing wrong with their art. There's nothing wrong with my art. The thing is that back in the day when I was creating it, and for those who were doing lots more before I was ever on the scene, it was so much harder because you had yourself and you marketed yourself, or you got into or with a gallery that believed in you and pushed you, and they would help market you. Also, when I was doing it, there were also print companies, publishing houses, and they would take you on and push your name. I was very lucky enough to have I had a connection with David Shepherd, and who is one of our most famous wildlife artists, and man that I personally could call friend, and also a mentor. And he was so inspirational without even knowing it when I was a youngster, in causing me to want to paint wildlife. I think it was his work and one of his books that I got hold of later that just drove me from day to day to want to create more wildlife. I'm getting really off topic now, I'm so sorry, but I sort of just get so passionate about all of this because I know that he had a wonderful publishing house called Solomon and Whitehead, and they did so much for him over the many years that he was creating art, beautiful wildlife pieces of art, and they sold so many of his prints. And they one day took me on. Back in, I think it was my first print with them came out in 1993, and for you youngsters out there, that's quite a long time ago. But I really was in cloud heaven for so long when they said yes, and they first brought my first 2 prints out, and then a few months later they brought 2 more out, and it was just absolutely fantastic. But then that was it. That was the only ways of doing it. Then came along things like great big booth shows in America, and things like the Southeastern Wildlife Art Expo, and I did that for over 9 years, and I loved it. I made heaps of friends, heaps of American friends, heaps of friends from other countries who came into Charleston each year just for this one big show. I did a tour. I used to do a tour around 2 or 3 other venues, and then go to different galleries that held my work and stay with them and make a real trip to America. It was like an annual pilgrimage I loved it. It was fantastic. But those days have long gone. I know the Siwi show still goes on, but it's changed a lot over the years, and it's not so easy for somebody like me from Great Britain to sort of get everything together, get it all shipped out there and make a go of something. It's sort of, the whole scene's changed quite a lot. But we have now got the internet, we have now got Instagram, we have got YouTube, we have got so many tools at our disposal that we can actually go out there and make something of ourselves. And I've got to say, I've come to YouTube, I've come to Instagram very, very late in my time, very late in my career, but it just goes to show, although I've got a long way to go with it, it goes to show that it's never too late, and you can alter what you're doing, and you can indeed change direction with what you're up to as an artist and carry on. You do not have to stay in the dark ages, as it were, trying to peddle your art to galleries. And this, nothing wrong with galleries, don't get me wrong, they have been so good to me over the years. I have enjoyed many friendships through them, and I've sold many pieces of art through them. That's all fantastic, but it's getting harder and harder. And in times of austerity, and more recently this devastating COVID pandemic, it's meant to say that galleries have had to pull in the reins, as we all have to a point, and choose very carefully who they hold as artists and promote as artists. It all costs money. So, you know, getting into a new gallery is very much more difficult these days, because they're going to spend out on their established artists before they start spending fresh new money on an artist that, or doesn't matter how well you paint, they haven't got any background on you in terms of clientele, so it's going to be a struggle to sell your work. So it all comes back to painting and working within the social networks, the social platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and I even heard of another one which apparently has been going a long time, called TikTok. I don't know what that's like. But the thing is that there are so many ways now that you can develop not only your art and your art skills, but the way that you present them to the world, and the way that you try and create a living from your ability to paint or teach, or however it may be done. And I think to that end, you have such a fantastic opportunity, or we all have the same opportunity to have the ability to go out there and create something and do something with it. I remember years ago, before I was full-time painting, I actually was a police officer. I was a copper. And I remember really when I was 17, no, sorry, not 17, of course I was. I was 19, and I was actually just on the pass-out parade, and the visiting assistant chief constable who come to see our parade and to give us the final sort of wave on into the force, as it were, came up with something and said that in every PC's knapsack is a chief constable's baton. Now, I've never forgotten that phrase. I never have done. It stood me well over the years. But it basically means to say that it doesn't matter who or what you're doing. There is every reason, if you work at something, that you can rise to the top and the cream, as it were, and establish yourself and make a living from what you're doing if you really want to push yourself. And I think that there are different degrees of success, and there are different degrees of reward. If you seek pure financial reward, then you may come unstuck. I think you have to temper that with the desire. The need is one thing. The desire is what drives you, is what keeps you fresh, is what keeps you buoyant, and it's what keeps you on the right course. And I think that I may well have given up painting years and years ago, over many times when it's got tough, because the desire would outweigh the need, or the other way round, and I just could not sustain things. I think that more often than not the desire was always stronger than the need. So even when the chips were down, I would still come into the studio and create work. I would still get a sketchbook out and do something. I would go outside and paint something. It didn't matter how bad things got, I would still create art. And I think that is the drive. I think unless you really have that drive, then you have to ask yourself some serious questions. Is this life really for me? And with that all said, I think, and I really hope that you can answer that question with a resounding yes. It really is for me, because there is nothing better than being able to create art, and even more so if you can actually impart that enthusiasm and that ability into other people. And that's really what I'm about. That, I mean, I've done all the mistakes. I've been creating art since I was a kid, and professionally since the mid-80s, and I would never change what I've done. In hindsight, I might have changed the way I did a few things, just try and make them better, but hey ho, that's the way it is, and that was decisions made at the time, right or wrong. But I think now that for me, it's I sort of still create, and I still long to wake up and create new pieces of art that I do hope that somebody out there not only just likes it, but likes it so much that they actually want to own it. They want to buy it. And that really is partly the most important thing, because it doesn't matter whether it's a small study or a huge painting. The buzz of somebody endorsing it enough to give up their hard-earned money to reward you for your efforts is such a buzz. It really never goes away. I had it when I first started painting. I still get it today, and I don't think that changes for anybody. But above all, I've just gone off topic. I am so sorry. I had never planned on this conversation going this way. I did have other things I wanted to talk about, but there you go. There's going to have to be some more videos like this, but I've enjoyed the natter. I've enjoyed talking to you on something or nothing, really, just stuff that comes into my head as I've gone through painting this picture. And on the topic of painting this picture, I really do hope that you've enjoyed it. I actually just realized I never finished the colors of the palette. After the blues, it's magenta, then it's cadmium red light, cadmium yellow deep, and cadmium lemon and titanium white. There you go. I'm sorry it's at the end of the video, but at least you've caught up. You know what the colors are, so you can always rewatch this and go back over and create something very similar yourself. The full version of this is on my Patreon, so if you want to see all of it, all the paint marks, everything there, and fully narrated, then go over to my Patreon, have a look, get involved with the tiers. That would be fantastic. There are full versions of all my paintings that you see in time-lapse on YouTube, so you can get involved and get so much more for your money. In the meantime, please have a go at this. The line art for this, the reference for this will be on Patreon, free to download to have a go at. But in the meantime, happy painting. Please, please, please stay safe. All the best. Bye bye.